Siddharth, right here. The seat waiting for you. Because this way it makes it easier for the people who come in late, then they can sit at the back. Great, thanks. All right, so welcome to the 10th edition of the ROWAD MAJLIS. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Marija Al-Shakar, and I head the development services within the Bahrain Development Bank. A lot of you know very well our BDB ROWAD platform, which hosts a variety of support services for entrepreneurs and SMEs here in Bahrain, alongside the other services that the bank offers. BDB ROWAD MAJLIS is a quarterly event that we bring together the entrepreneurs, supporting organizations, investors, all together in an environment where people can share ideas, listen to thought-provoking discussions like the one we will be having tonight, and be able to network and build their network. Tonight, we're very lucky to have our group CEO, Mr. Sanjeev Paul, who will be doing our opening remarks. So if you can please join your hands to welcome him on stage.
Thank you so much, Arich. Can you all hear me? Okay, I'm relatively new in Bahrain. I came here around middle of May, the best time I'm told weather-wise, but it's thankfully getting better. So maybe I can start with a brief introduction of what all I have done in since I am at an age where I have a lot of years behind me, more than the years ahead of me. So I am a career banker. I spent 31 years with a bank called Standard Chartered in various parts of the world. My last 9 years were in Singapore, handling the commercial banking business for the bank. I also chair the board of directors of Standard Chartered Vietnam, which is quite an interesting country. It's very similar to Bahrain in its hunger for growth, in its hunger for technology and digital, everything digital. So it's an interesting place to head a board there. I joined Bahrain Development Bank, as I said, in May. And I'd like to also talk about why I decided to come to Bahrain Development Bank after so many years in Standard Chartered. So one of the passions I have is on supporting SMEs and startups. And when I started meeting the various board members of Bahrain Development Bank, when we started talking, I could see the earnestness and the honesty of institutions like EDB, which incidentally has, my boss is the CEO of EDB, and some of the other board members also work in EDB. So I could see the earnestness of the country as a whole to support startups and to support the whole ecosystem which surrounds startups. So that kind of struck a chord with me, to say the least. And then as I started meeting other people in Bahrain, I saw this as a country which has a great human capital, a lot of intellectual capital, a hunger for growth, and the right leadership through both institutions and the people who head the country, senior leadership in the country. So it was something which resonated very deeply with me in terms of what BDB can do for startups. Coming to BDB specifically, it has the core mandate of supporting, financing entrepreneurs in Bahrain, whether they are startups or early stage companies or late stage companies. So I always like to explain BDB's core mandate as much more than just a bank. So we start with companies simply with an idea. So people come to us simply with an idea, and we do seed fuel equity, which many of you would be familiar with. So we can invest up to 25,000 dinars in individual, I would say, ideas, because they are not companies yet. And then as companies grow, we can support them through various forums and cash and mentoring and coaching. So pretty much it's a full service bank for a company through its life cycle, which is quite a unique model. More than just financing, we also run 2 incubators. As many of you would know, we have a women-only incubator in Riyadat in Ali. We have an industrial incubator in Hid. So we run those 2 incubators in addition to just doing core SME financing or startup financing. And lastly, and very importantly, we also recently launched the Al-Waha Fund, which is a $100 million US fund. It's a fund of funds to invest and in companies and provide venture capital to companies which operate not only in Bahrain, but in the entire region. So I believe it's one of the first funds which has closed with actual cash. We've already decided on the first 35% of where the money will go. And there is more in the pipeline. So all in all, you know, it's an exciting job for me, and I'm sure it's exciting times for the country. So I mentioned earlier that BDB supports startups right through their journey. And I think the ROWAD Majlis, which I believe is the 10th edition, although this is my first since I am relatively new in the country, is one of the things that the bank does, Bahrain Development Bank does, to support entrepreneurs. And I attended another ROWAD program where we had the EAT app promoter who came and spoke to us. And today we have an equally illustrious person, Junaid, right here, who will take us through his journey and hopefully, you know, address some of the queries that people have on how to get a company going and be successful. So without further ado, can I invite Junaid to come on stage and speak to the audience?
So before we get Junaid on stage, we're going to have a photo up with the CEO. And while I just wanted to thank everybody for actually taking the time on their weekend. So it is a Thursday night. And for you to actually be here shows you know, the amount of dedication and interest that you have towards your startups, or just on your, you know, learning, being keen to learn more about this environment and how this can support you. So I'm going to talk a little bit more until, okay, great. All right, so if we can have Junaid join us on stage.
Assalamu alaikum.
So Junaid, thank you so much for joining us. I believe you've had quite a hectic travel journey over from country to country.
Yeah, I'm used to it now.
And Lemis, by the way, if you're here, he's a little bit upset about the flight you chose for him. It was quite early.
It's like 5 a.m. and I can't sleep after Fajr.
So we've given him a lot of coffee and tea, so hopefully, you know, he'll be quite alert for tonight. But maybe, Junaid, we can start about you telling us a little bit more about yourself and, you know, what Wahid's all about and, you know, your journey. I mean, is it a little bit of a...
Mic issue?
Yeah.
Is it fine or?
Yeah, maybe it's better. Sorry. I think it's the...
Oh, you don't think it's working?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just take it off.
Hello? Yeah, this is
great.
better.
Yeah, much better. Okay, great.
So, yeah, sure. I'm Indian originally, from Bombay. I grew up in Dubai. I did my undergrad studies in Dubai as well. So I went to AUD, very close to home. So my parents didn't want me going too far. I was quite young at the time. After that, I did my master's at Columbia in financial engineering and stochastic mathematics. And then I worked in investment banking briefly in growth equity.
Sorry, I'm going to interrupt you. What was that? What mathematics?
Stochastic mathematics. And,
so for the layman.
Optimization. So we learn how to optimize anything. So traffic, for example, how do signals work? How do you make roads? Everything is math, and it's quite beautiful when it comes down to it. So all we did for 2 years was theoretical math on how to optimize anything whatsoever. So data, roads, even dustbins. So there was a really famous case study in New York. Where do you put a dustbin to optimize it? Where do people throw the trash? How many do you need? How much plastic does it weigh? It's all math. So that's what I did. Yeah.
Thank you. Sorry, continue.
Okay, so after that, worked in investment banking. I did a few of these degrees on the side. So I gave my CPA exams, CAIA, CMA. I was quite a studious kid at the time. And then I set up Wahid around 3 years ago. Should I just...
Go ahead.
Okay, so the reason I set it up at the time is firstly because of my background in optimization, financial engineering. What I realized is everyone around me who didn't have millions of dollars didn't know how to invest their money and didn't have anywhere to go to invest their money. So all the money was in the bank. So 5,000, 10,000, 100,000, it was always in the bank because they couldn't go to a wealth manager unless they had $1 million or $500,000. Now, in the Western world and a lot of developed countries, including Bahrain, UAE, you do have financial products, but there's a specific niche of faith-based investing. So practicing Muslims, for example, we can't invest in excessive debt because it qualifies as riba interest. We can't invest in a lot of things, firearms, pornography, tobacco, anything unethical. So what do these people do? What we realize is they just keep the money in cash. They don't do anything with it, and they don't take the interest. So over time, they lose out. And this is the vast majority of practicing Muslims. Once they get rich enough, it's only real estate. Mathematically, this is very, very inefficient. You're not diversified, you lose out over time, and so a lot of people keep getting richer while the practicing Muslim population has a negative bias. So we set out to fix that because what we saw is the fintech has started up. There was already such a thing as robo-advisory. What is robo-advisory? Wealth management online without financial advisors, without the branch. You go online, you answer a few questions. It says, okay, based on your answers, you can take so much risk. We will optimize a portfolio for you and take care of it. You don't have to worry about it. You can see it the whole time. So this was already existent. What we thought is we can very easily run an ethical filter through this. And, a solution for 99% of the world's Muslim population, and we're great. It wasn't that simple at all. So it took us around a year and a lot more money than we thought to get the initial prototype running because there were a lot of hiccups. Firstly, how do you access international products? Not that easy. We had to tie up with all different broker-dealers. How do you access sukuk? So sukuk is an Islamic version of a bond, you can say. It's an asset-backed security. And they're traded in $200,000 blocks over the counter. How do you trade this in a liquid manner? No one had figured it out. It took us, I think, 6 months of a lot of brain power in people to figure out how to fractionalize sukuk. So we did that. At the end, we had a prototype, and what we didn't realize is that was a lot of work that we had done. So we went live, and in the first 3 months, we had over 1,000 people putting all their wealth management savings with us, which is a very big deal. In America, that's 3 times the growth rate of any robo-advisory startup, the multi-billion-dollar ones. And this was with no marketing money. So what we kind of hypothesized is why are people doing this? So when we went to find out, we saw most of our clients were first-time investors. They weren't coming from competing platforms. They weren't coming from Vanguard or Schwab or another bank. They just kept their money in cash. And they said, finally, I have somewhere I can trust to keep my money and earn some money, and it's halal, so I'm very happy. So that was our clientele. And then it's very community-driven, so they would tell their family, they would tell their friends, and they would say, why are you keeping your money in the bank when the bank uses it for interest when you can keep it here? And it's invested, and your money can grow, and it's optimized, and there's a Sharia board, and it's very transparent. And so it just started growing. And that's when, we got that natural traction, and we had a lot of people, interested in us, and so far, so good. So what ended up happening is we got a lot of interest from a lot of different types of people. One thing we did in terms of fundraising, taking on partners, is initially we met I met 3 people, individuals. You could call them angel investors. They weren't angel investors for a living, but they were leaders of the industry. So one was a global director of McKinsey and Company, one is a Bahraini gentleman, and they came saying, you know, Junaid, this is genuinely a good thing. We believe in this, and we want to help you. You know, whatever you need, we'll help you. And so the culture was a great fit. They were the nicest people to the point where I couldn't say no, because for me, I wanted to execute, right? You want to push this out in the world. You want everyone to use this. And here's people saying, you know, we'll help you however
so what,
we can.
They just drop onto your, you know, onto your doorstep? How did that happen? Because I think, you know, for some of the startups here in the audience, they'll probably say, that doesn't happen to me. So how did you manage to get that kind of interest?
Very good question. The first person I met, I knew from work. He was an ex-partner at McKinsey. So just as one person, I'd never even met him before. I think I had texted him once, an email or something like that. So I just asked him, you know, I want your advice on this. And I just genuinely went to him for advice because he knows the industry inside and out. So I went to him and I showed him everything, and he was listening to me for like an hour. And then he said, Junaid, you know, do you have another hour? I want to take you to meet someone. So I was like, sure. We go to, this was in Dubai. He took me to DIFC, and there was, in the McKinsey office, the global director was visiting from France. So he took me to him, and he said, you know, Laurent, you have to hear this guy out. So I think for the next 3 hours, they just went through all my platform, my data, just question after question after question. And at the end, they were like, Junaid, we've, you know, been consultants for Al-Raji, Al-Baraka. We've built all of this for the past 30 years. No one's been able to serve retail. And it seems that you might have solved it, so we want to, you know, come on board.
But, you know, were you prepared for that meeting, or, you know, how?
Of course, absolutely not.
But absolutely not?
No, okay. So I was of a very immature mindset. I can do this myself. You know, I don't need anyone. I have $50,000. I'm a king.
How many of you startups have that kind of, like, thought, or had that kind of thought when starting? Everyone's going to be scared to raise their hands. Okay, there's one. Okay. 2. All right, go ahead.
Yeah, so I was like that, and then they just said, look, Junaid, you don't know anything. You need a lot more money and a lot more time. And so it was really nice of them to, and they were genuinely nice people, and you can tell. So they said, look, you'll need so much money, you know, we'll be very fair, and it was very quick, very easy on trust, you know, and they came on board.
But on trust, I mean, on trust, you said, okay, fine, come in with us, or did you have that set up?
At that point, I had no prototype, I had no product. I didn't even have a business plan. I had nothing. It was them talking to me for 4 hours, saying, this makes sense. They were confident enough to say, I know this industry, I know what I'm doing, and this might be a solution. Honestly, that's it. Later, I made a business plan. Way more than what was required. So when I sent that, because I was from investment banking, you know, in New York, it's quite a high level. I had a 60-page IM, you know, perfect, and I sent that out, and they're like, Junaid, do you think we're going to read this crap? You know, we want to give you the money. This is great, but when you're raising 100 million, you can use this. So they came on board, and they were very involved initially. Right? So every few days we would have a call. They were genuinely involved. And the best possible thing is they believed in the product. They truly believed in the product. And over time, they became less and less involved because we needed less and less help, you know, and then they were there when we needed them. So those were the 3 angel investors. And I think, honestly speaking, it's the best case scenario in angel investors. I've heard some horror stories. Most people who are seasoned angel investors can't give that much time because they're, you know, running like kind of their own VC shop, from what I've seen. But these guys just said it's a one-off thing. You know, I like your product, so I'll put my money down. And have skin in the game. So it was the best decision. They had their contacts, they had the credibility, they had the trust, and they had the know-how to build it from scratch. So they came on board. That's the initial money I used to get the prototype, the licensing, build a tiny team. It costs a lot to get a fintech company up and running. I had no idea. Legal fees just go out the window. And so after the US, I think that was a good decision we made, honestly, to start in the US because it gives you that credibility.
What do you mean by that? Why credibility? I mean, like, this is a, you know, a Sharia-compliant platform. Why would the US?
So it's a very, very sad thing to say, and I hope I'm the only person who has this opinion. But it was the most welcoming at that time. When I went around saying anything like this anywhere else in the world, it wouldn't have, there's no way. It's because it was SEC regulated. Even these angel investors, the thing that caught their mind is, you're SEC regulated? That's a huge deal. It's a gold standard, it's a big deal. Turns out it's the easiest regulator to get a license from because they're just very, very efficient, and they've done this 100 times before. So we started off there. It gave us that gold standard, and then it helped us move east. So that's when institutions started reaching out to us. So then you get the PR, a few press releases, you start getting a few articles. And I think that's where media has quite an important role to play.
I mean, I think that, it's hard to get you on stage, Junaid. Sometimes, you're always like, camera shy in a way. So when you're saying now media plays a big role, tell us about how somebody convinced you to get
Yeah, so...
how did you get,
the media wasn't about me. Okay, it was about, here's a product, and we're pushing this out. And at that time, we had no idea what is PR, what's the, you type it in Google and you figure it out. So I found PR Newswire, I wrote my own press release, I pushed it out. Till today, that's the best press release we've ever given, and we have all these PR firms now working for us. So I think you can never substitute your own work, that's for sure. But yeah, we got that initial PR and the hype, and see, the difference between prototype and actually having a working product is night and day. So the day we got that working product and someone could see it and they could, use it, it was a whole different world. That's when, people started reaching out to us. And we were, it's a rare case, but we were, alhamdulillah, very, very lucky that we've never had to reach out to investors. It's a really weird thing to say, but we've never fundraised. So we had someone call me up randomly on my phone, and I picked up. I was in the garden. I don't know what I was doing. And this guy introduces himself, and he says, I'm from a VC firm, Q-Ball Capital, and I just love what you're doing. And so we spoke just about the product, about me, no numbers. Again, he's like, Junaid, I want in on this no matter what. Whatever it is, meet me next week. So I meet this guy once, and in 1 week, he's like, okay, we've had an investor committee meeting. How much do you need? We want, to invest as much as we can. Again, no numbers. So I think that initial period is not on the numbers. And that's what, in my opinion, and I may be wrong, this region still hasn't figured out. Over here, people still ask numbers. How much revenue, how much profit. They don't understand that if you're going to change an industry, if you're actually going to do things of substance, it's going to take you a while. It's going to take you a really long time. So the guts to believe in a dream, it needs to be there. And I think that's something that I've seen, traces of in Bahrain that I'm very, very impressed with, which I haven't seen in the rest of the region. But all of these initial guys, they bet on a dream. It was like, look, everyone needs this. I know people need this. I trust you. Q-Ball invests in human capital. So they're like, we like you, we like your team. We want to, and they didn't care where I was based. We could have been based anywhere. We were an Islamic company, it's based out of Boston, Q-Ball Capital. It's a misconception that we have that, people aren't going to be interested because it's Islamic, because we're in the Middle East. That's not true at all. If you meet these VCs in America nowadays, America has been exhausted with capital. There's nothing left to invest in. All of these guys are taking international trips, finding companies to throw money. They have so much money. It's unbelievable. So don't think for a second that you're limited to only Bahraini VCs or regional VCs. Anyone and everyone is fair game. And if you see a lot of these funds, they're all global investors. All the big guys, all the guys that know what they're doing. Because in today's day and age, with the internet, there are no boundaries anymore. Everyone's educated all over the place. Everyone grows up all over the place. So that's something very important that I have realized, that the world is open to you. Do not limit yourself for capital, for reaching out to people for advice. You can call anyone. We emailed the CEO of MasterCard, and he replied back, I think in 2 days. It was unbelievable. And you're like the CEO of global MasterCard? you just have to email these guys, right? They have 10 assistants. They can see the email.
I mean, I think that, that's interesting that you say that, because a lot of times, we sit and we try to preach about, building up your product and building up your startup, that eventually, if you have, a platform or a project or a company that's worth investing, people won't care where you're from, where you're based, because they're in to make money. But then when you're at that early stage, right, you need to find that person who's going to believe in the dream.
Yep.
And after that, you need to focus on building your company. So there's this sort of, what do we call it, controversy between, okay, how much time does an entrepreneur or a CEO of a startup or any company spend on stage or going and visiting people and doing these photo ops? And then sometimes, some investors start to worry, if all the time this guy is out and about, how much time does he dedicate? So maybe talk to us a little bit about when you started to sort of free yourself up to sort of give back, or quote unquote start to build the brand for Wahed, because people were coming after you, but they wouldn't probably come after you if there was no solid business there. And what is it that you think the investors most look at when you're at building up the company, and what is it that makes them feel at ease when they look at Wahed?
Those are really, really good questions. In terms of the press and media, the way it worked for us, initially anything we could get exposure to, we wanted to get exposure to, right? You're invited to a panel, you're invited for this, and it's it's new, and it's like, wow, I want to do it, and you meet people, and that opens the doors. But then it comes to a point where you have the money, you have the resources, you know what you want to do. What's the point of this stuff? So for us, we just completely went incognito and built product. And I think that's more of a personal decision. A lot of entrepreneurs like to be there to spearhead, and it has its advantages and disadvantages. Networking is a great thing. At the end of the day, it's all networking after a certain point. But I think what's more important is what you said, what investors look out for. I think the most important thing, and don't take this lightly, is honesty and integrity. If at any point in time they doubt you even the littlest bit in terms of your integrity, no one will ever give you money again. It's a very, very big deal to everyone, and for good reason. They are trusting their money with you on a dream, on something that's not there. So I would suggest and recommend be as transparent as you can. Whenever we had the biggest problems, the first thing I do is tell our investors, just like, look, just so you guys know, we're dealing with this. And they really, really appreciated that. Everyone knows there's risk involved, right? In these companies, let's say in publicly listed companies, right, you expect 10% return. In these companies, you expect 10x, 50x, 20x. The risk, is correlated to that. So they know there's a very, very good chance you're going to fail and you're going to come into huge barriers, and that's what they're, betting on, that you can surpass these barriers. So if everything is all great all the time, it's not true. And you need to be honest and transparent with everyone, because they can help you. They can really help you. We've had times where we've had some really big issues, and after telling investors, they've been like, oh yeah, don't worry. It's happened many times to our, we've seen it happen, don't worry. And that relaxed us. So I think honesty and integrity reaches second to none. Without that, there's no use going forward.
I mean, I think that's an important lesson, because I don't know about how many startups we have in the room, but how many times have people tried to sort of show, we can take care of this, everything's fine. And I think even, working in an organization, sometimes we're afraid to show that we're stuck in a rut and we can't deal with things. But I think you're right. Every time that you're able to sort of admit that you have a weakness or you're facing a challenge, that's when you'll be able to reach out to people that can actually help you or assist you. I think people take it lightly, this whole point of misrepresentation. So how many times have companies liquidated? It's that fine print in those term sheets that you write. You can actually trigger liquidation of a company when you misrepresent. And then when you come to that point, I've seen a lot of startups that say, I didn't misrepresent, but you did. You did misrepresent when you didn't tell us that you weren't working, or the team fell apart. And that brings to me my other point. I think you spoke about building your team. it's very hard to keep talent, I think, especially when, like you said, you're in an environment where startups are flourishing everywhere. How did you build your team, and how do you know what are the good things to sort of attract talent to a startup? Because again, they have to believe in the dream, they have to believe in you.
Yeah, absolutely. So our team, we're quite proud of who's involved, and we actually started our Middle East office a year ago, and we've moved most of our very, very senior people here. So our head of tech is ex-Microsoft. He was at Columbia with me, and he was in the AI division there in Microsoft Research. Head of portfolio, Samim, he was at Google managing their portfolios. He was with JP Morgan for 10 years before that. Chief legal officer, JD from Georgetown, AM top 100 lawyer. So we do pride ourselves on talent and quality. And I think the most important reason that they came to us and didn't leave is the fact, again, very similar to investors, is they found us. It's not common. We don't fill positions like, okay, I need to recruit for this, let me go find someone. We've done that, and in a year, there's been churn. If you look at data, all these startups, you know what the average tenure is of employees of startups? It's like a year, 1 year. The average tenure of people. They join and they leave because everybody's ambitious, everybody wants to join a startup, take the risk. So that just doesn't work for us. We do everything that we can, and when people reach out, we see if they fit and the culture fits, and so far that's worked like a dream. We have the best people. They haven't gone anywhere in 3 years. We've had one person leave who was recruited, and so I think it's very, very important to note that sure, investors might say, okay, you need to follow this hiring plan. For us, there's no such thing. As long as the work gets done, we don't need to hire. In fact, the more lean, the better. If you look at Robinhood, multi-billion-dollar fintech startup, they have 100 people now. 100 people, and they manage over 1 million clients. You don't need a lot of people. The less the people, the better. So, it's not a good thing when someone says, I have so many employees in my company. You're inefficient. You don't need so many people. Your tech is not good enough, maybe. But I think that's, really important.
Optimization, you can tell that's his field. That's an interesting point that you bring, and I think a lot of times people, and I think this happens a lot in the West, where they sort of keep people in because they start to get options into the company. And so, you set up in the States, you set up a Middle East office. Do you provide that kind of, ownership within the company, or how does that work? Because you started out saying, I don't need anyone, I can do this all myself. But how did you start to sort of let go?
Again, personal decision was to not be too involved with the equity piece. So I personally, like, you have people who start up companies who are very worried about dilution and about this, how much am I going to have? For me, that doesn't work because it just distracts you, and it's a very negative thing to have in your mind. So for me personally, I've always been like, whatever the board decides, the more the better, because they'll be very, very involved. And so we do reward people very handsomely with options, and I do push personally for as much as possible for everyone, because at the end of the day, if we don't execute, it's a waste of everything, right? For me, I want to see this being done, and I want it executed. Not to worry about, I'll have, 50 points, so much percent. Like, it means nothing at the end of the day because these values are so volatile and the business is so volatile. So I would highly recommend that don't get lost in the whole numbers game. Be obviously safe and well thought out, but the last thing you want to do is have stress when it comes to money, because it's a very negative thing. Everyone needs to be in this together positively to, achieve a goal. And it's a very thin line. It's very easy to get bogged down, by negativity and saying, the more I give, the less I'll have. It doesn't work like that.
Something that I think some of the startups sometimes face and they worry about, and it's linked to sort of money, but you can get some really, really, lousy terms on a term sheet, So a company comes up with an idea and all of a sudden they want to take 30 to 40% of the company or up to 50% for, very little money. And then a lot of people say then that sets them up to fail, because the next time when they're fundraising for their next cycle, how do they sort of, work with that, cap table, and how does that work? So, did you encounter that, or did you have people who were very honest and you were lucky about that?
Yeah, see, company to company, it's completely different from what I've seen. We have, like, genuinely, alhamdulillah, had an unbelievable experience. Where it's been completely, you know, on trust. Nobody's been fighting for anything. For me personally, I like to know that I have, you know, control and voting rights. But in terms of the share percentage, I don't think you have to worry. If you have, what was the statistic? I think the average founder is left with some 8% of their company. 8%. So dilute how much ever you want. Dilute 30%, dilute 50%, dilute whatever. If you really want to get something done, you have to be willing to give it up. I don't think that's a big deal. If you look at Google and all of these guys, what they do is they make sure they have voting rights, and they just dilute all the equity because, you know, they get the work done, but they have control. So it's on a case-by-case basis. It's also industry by industry, because certain industries, for example, for us in financial services, it's very important to have an independent and strong board, or no one's going to trust you. I can't just say I'm the only board member, you know, no one's going to give you money. So it really depends. Or if you have an app, you can be a lot more, you know, malleable, and you can kind of push for your own terms. It really depends.
Okay, no, that's some really good advice, because I think a lot of times we do get people who get bogged down, but no, you're taking away 2% more of my company, you're killing me, you're doing that. But like you said, if you're actually getting people on board that can help your work get done, then why not? Like, you know, just let's work together. And that brings back to, you know, I think the common thread that we've been talking about here is trust, and the trust with your team, and also the trust with your investors. So, you know, VCs are known to be what they, you know, they have this reputation of being sharks, yeah. But then, you know, and sometimes I feel, but, you know, sometimes you know, what they bring on the table can really help you go from, you know, just thinking, you know, let's say you're thinking of the US, or, you know, thinking about expanding. I think a lot of times we get, you know, being on an island, people say that, you know what, we only think about Bahrain, or we only think about our neighboring countries. How did, when you were thinking of Wahed, you know, where did you imagine it to be? Did you always think that you're going to be serving the world, or did you have your investors push you that way?
Honestly, yeah. So my thinking was, again, very immature. I was thinking, oh, we just have this, you know, small thing, and it'll just serve the whole world. It doesn't work like that in regulation. But yeah, I think what we've seen in terms of VCs, I think an important point to note is, if you're raising funds, it's not only VCs that you can go to. There's this company I met based out of England. They've raised £50 million, not a single dollar from VCs. All of it from family, friends. And I was like, what? And they were like, yeah, because we get the best terms. We just go to everyone and get 100,000 to 500,000 from everyone, and we raised 50 million. I was like, wow. So VCs, they have to be sharks. They're fund managers. Also, another point to note is you can put yourself on the other side of the table. VCs have to show their LPs something. These guys have investors. The VCs have investors as well. You need to know what they're looking for. Everyone has something they're looking for. Whether it's an industry, whether it's a new hot buzzword, whatever it is, at the end of the day, it's everyone selling to everyone else. The company's selling to the VC, VC's selling to the LPs, LPs are selling to their shareholders. It's, I think the more you understand of the game, the easier it is. And don't limit yourself to VCs. You'll meet a random guy on the street who understands your business, he'll put in $500,000. It's really...
How many of you agree with him? Do you think that really happens? Yeah, it does? Okay. I mean, I think that sometimes, you know, people say, well, if it didn't happen to me, that means it doesn't happen, right? But I think, you know, it's very hard to, I mean, I think maybe what I'm learning from you here is that you spend a lot of time focusing on building your business, and I think that's what maybe people put in trust. So one thing that, you know, one investor once told me is that they don't look at anything. They don't look at numbers. They don't look at anything. They just look at the ability of that person to answer questions, and the ability for them to trust that that person will take the company through anything. So I'm sure, you know, there's a lot of startups that at some point after 3 years, they're like, that's it, I'm out of here, you know, and the first check that they get, you know, they'll take it. And then the investor on the other side says, you know what, you gave up prematurely, and maybe the money would have come back, but still. And so, again, how do you deal with that? Like, how do you keep the interest, in Wahed,
No, we've had people pass up on us because of that. I had someone come to me, just sold his company to Google for $100 million, the nicest guy, and he said, Junaid, I'll give you how much ever money you need. He was giving us like a lot of crazy money, and he's like, you just have to tell me that, if we get an amount over this price, you'll sell it because I'll get you the person to buy you out. And we were like, honestly, no, we don't want to do that. So we passed up on it. Maybe it was a bad decision. Today, I don't think it was, alhamdulillah, but it's on you. It's your company. You have to make that decision. There are investors who want to get out after certain multiples. There are some investors who want to see it through completely. The people we have on board, very long term. One of our investors, like Q-Ball Capital, it's a VC firm, it's evergreen. What that means is there's no end of the fund. They just see it through however long you want to drag it on. So you get different people with different time horizons, and it has to fit your time horizon, because at the end of the day, you are the value. They're investing in you, and like you rightly said, they can start the business if they think the business is good. Everyone has every idea, but the value is who's going to actually do it. What we did was not new. Robo-advisors existed. Islamic finance existed. Sharia boards existed. But there was nobody there to do it. Why? I don't know. Don't ask me, but nobody does stuff. So that's the value, and you're absolutely right. But different investors have different time horizons. Depends on you.
Okay, great. There's an important element that we try to sort of promote in terms of mentorship. So you were saying that you can send an email to people and they'll actually answer your questions. Do you have time to mentor, and do you actually, how much time do you take being mentored from different people?
So I'll be very honest with you. Most of the random emails get ignored, but you read every email, right? You always read every email. If something catches your eye, you're going to take it on. There have been 2 random startups that I've personally invested in and said, this makes sense. And I've introduced them to our investors, and they've got more funding. And don't be shy to email people. There's no harm. There's no harm whatsoever. It takes a second of your time. I can't, emphasize that enough. And don't just email anyone randomly. The specific person you need help from and you think is perfect for the firm, he will think the same. So if you genuinely reach out to that person saying, look, this is the synergy, this is what I'm doing, you understand it better, do you think it makes sense? And ask them genuinely. They might say, no, it doesn't make sense, they might ignore you, maybe you can rethink your strategy, but if they like it, they'll take it. Everybody wants to make money.
But I mean, Junaid, you've painted quite a rosy picture here. So have you had anybody to come and tell you, what are you talking about? Are you crazy? And how did you sort of deal with that?
Okay, very good question. You have to be very arrogant to be doing this stuff. To be starting up a company, you have to be really, really thick-skinned. 24/7, you're going to have people coming at you telling you, this is crap, this doesn't make sense, it's not going to work, what is this, what value is this? That becomes part of your life, and you just learn to ignore it. So,
so you don't go out and get upset and like punch the wall and
Well, that's why I'm saying you have to have the personality where it's like, I'll show you, I'll do it better.
Then when can you decipher between when that actual, constructive criticism or whatever that case is can actually help you, sort of change your business model? Because sometimes people might actually make sense when they're saying, you know what, Junaid, this is not the right way. Why don't you do it this way?
See, Arij, at the end of the day, you have to believe in yourself. If you don't, there's no point. Even if you're wrong, you might fail, but if you don't believe in yourself, you're not going to take that risk. And that's everything. So for me personally, and that's what people are investing in you for, to believe in yourself. The day you start doubting yourself too much, the value goes away. Of course, listen to people, listen to what they're saying, but you have to take a decision. And you have to think enough and understand enough to be able to take that decision. At the end of the day, if you're building a company, your whole life is decision making. Every single thing is a decision, and over time it just gets quicker decisions with less information. That's it. Absolutely, you have to take it into account, but you cannot just change your business because some guy says it. If he knew everything, I mean, maybe if he's a billionaire, listen to him, but most people aren't, right? So, yeah, I wouldn't take it too heavily.
Great. I mean, I think that, as I'm looking into the audience, I want to open the floor for questions, and I think I lost my mic. Oh, there it is. Can we start with a question? Okay, we have one right here already. because otherwise I'm going to just talk forever, and I've been, been accused by always having the mic and speaking a lot.
Thanks, Arij, for
If you can just also introduce yourself.
Hi, this is Samir. Arij, thanks for bringing a stochastic mathematician to spice it up.
At least you know how to pronounce it. I'm having a hard time.
Just about. I have two questions, if I may. It appears you had this nice runway opening up in the US. You said you got the gold standard, SEC accreditation and all of that, but do you think a lot of that is to do with the fact that the community of Muslims in the US has been proven to have more cohesiveness, are higher educated, more disposable income than other Muslim communities? For example, in the UK, if you got an FSA approval there, it's more to do about the community dynamics and the access to disposable income. The second question is, if you flip it round, a lot of Muslims in the US and my friends in Europe, for instance, they have this romantic idea of the Middle East as everyone is this law-abiding Muslim and everyone's praying and the adhan is always all of that stuff, and therefore it's all going to be very rosy when you introduce this halal product or Sharia compliant product. In that respect, do you think that it'll come down more to financial returns rather than just being Sharia compliant, as opposed to we're all Muslims here generally speaking and it's all very Sharia compliant? Those are my two questions.
No, you're absolutely right. Short answer. So in America, what we've seen, super educated. Everyone's an immigrant. To immigrate there, you have to be a doctor, lawyer, whatever. All the high earners, very educated. We made the product for the common man. Taxi drivers, grocery store owners, anyone and everyone who needs somewhere to keep their money. What we saw is most of our clients are super educated. They're young, but doctors, lawyers, in finance. So yes, that had a huge role to play. And however, they're the initial adopters, right? So we did learn from that. That wasn't the hypothesis. However, once they started adopting it, you see, we started getting pre-registered clients from the rest of the world in the thousands. And those were common people. Those were people who said, it's an Islamic product. I'm in India. I have nowhere to keep my money. I'm in Japan. I'm in Brazil. We get emails daily. Like the last one I got, I remember it very clearly, is from a woman in Brazil who was saying, thank you for letting me keep my money with you, because in Brazil I have nowhere to keep my money. There's no Islamic bank. So thank you so much. It was unbelievable. Now, in terms of data, how it's going to work, I think a big thing we'll see is the mass is here, because now we're testing with the numbers, multiples of what we're getting in the US and UK. However, the average amount size will be lower. But what we're seeing is there's a crazy skew. So we're getting some very high net worths. We have some random people sending us $100,000 to test the account. So you and then you have everyone putting $100. But at the end of the day, nobody knows. And that's the beauty of it. If you look at Islamic banks, where are they? Saudi, UAE, a little in the GCC, and Malaysia, right? Where else in the world? There's one in the UK with 2 branches. There's nothing anywhere else in the world. India has 300 million Muslims. Nigeria has 100 million Muslims. That's more than the GCC's population. These are practicing Muslims, and they have nowhere to keep their money. So we get those emails, those thousands of people. So our hypothesis is the world is big enough to learn. And I'll give you an example. Those prayer apps like Islamic Finder, the Azan app, and anyone who prays 5 times a day, you need it. You're traveling, the time changes. Each of those have 10 million active users each. Active people who pray 5 times a day. We have exclusive arrangements with them to target practicing Muslims. That's a crazy number of people. The largest Islamic bank in the world, I think, has 3 million clients. We're saying you onboard in 2 minutes. Our proof of concept for the next year is to prove 1,000 clients a day, which I think, inshallah, we should hit. 1,000 clients a day makes you the, I think, second fastest growing fintech in the world. So yes, the numbers are against you. Everything is against you. It might not work, but that's the fun, right? And that's the beauty of the product. You'll find out, you'll learn, and we'll see. And that's what we're in it for.
I always have a problem with the qibla on these apps, I end up like every day praying like in a different direction. I think I need to get some tips on how to use that one. Great, thanks, Junaid. Any other questions? One over here and then one at the back.
Thank you so much, Arij, for bringing Junaid here. It was so inspirational. As a founder, my name is Shantini, and I'm founder of a fintech company, many fintech products we are doing. And one thing which I noticed is, as you said, self-belief, even from the way how you answer, it is making us to make sure that you made all your investors to come because you believed in yourself. And you made everything more clear, what you're doing, that brought lots of good things all over your journey. And when Rij was asking, how do you manage some of the investors if they are not going to believe you? You said, we have to be arrogant. So I just wanted to know how that will work, because as a woman entrepreneur, it's not going to work out. But when you're sitting and saying,
Come on, we're representing the power of women.
Yes.
I'm just kidding, sorry.
Yeah. Arrogancy, will it make the investor to feel comfortable? And I just want an explanation in that place, because I always feel we have to be humble and clear and talking with our investors, even if they are negative. So here there is a contradiction.
You're absolutely right. And I'm honestly very wrong to say that, because even Islamically speaking, we're not supposed to have a shred of arrogance. So you're...
That's the satas, whatever, mathematics that gets you to become like that.
You're absolutely right. And you should be as humble as possible. I'm saying internally, I have to believe. So I'm not going to tell this guy, you're wrong, go home. I'm not going to be arrogant to his face. But I will believe. I'll say, thank you for your advice, and I'll go do my own thing. And I'll take what he says. That's what I mean. I mean, self-belief less than arrogance. Arrogance was the wrong term, so apologies.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Junaid, once again for dropping by. When you're making products like these, how do you choose which asset classes to give to the customers? Because we have thousands of asset classes out there. We have equities, we have real estate, which can be dropped down to even retail customers. How do you choose which one is the best to serve your customers?
Okay, fair enough. So our investment methodology, I'll walk you through it. So there's only a few asset classes. There's equities, there's commodities, there's fixed income, there's real estate, and then there's thousands of securities within the asset class. So the first thing we do is, like you rightly said, we select the asset class. We look at the correlation and covariance between the asset classes to see the maximum diversification benefit, which is what high net worth wealth managers would do. After doing that, we select the most optimal instrument to give exposure to that asset class. So let's say equities. For equities, what is the most optimal way I can get exposure to equities that is Islamic? Initially, the universe was tiny. There was nothing to invest in, right? There was a handful. We didn't have much choice. As of today, we had to go build our own index. So we partnered with S&P. We launched the Wahid S&P Sharia Compliant Index in America. So we just removed that whole fee. As of today, you have investors who can get equity exposure for 0.29%. All inclusive. Imagine that. You go to your wealth manager, he charges you 1%, he'll give you a mutual fund which probably charges an entry fee, then a 1% management fee, then an exit fee, then there's a custody fee, then there's a brokerage fee, and then he's getting a kickback. It's around 3 to 4% on average. We got that down to 0.29%. It's a joke of an industry. But what we have to do is educate the consumer, right? Because how is a common man going to understand what that even means? To put it short and sweet, in your lifespan, it'll save you like $1 million just by saving in the fees. So if you see a mutual fund, the mutual funds underperform the index, I think 89% of the time. What that means is, if you take money and you throw it into the stock market and you buy every single thing, you will beat 89% of the mutual funds in the market. That's what it means. People don't realize that, but their fees are that high. So we just use modern portfolio theory, make it transparent, and just tell the common man, we don't tell them all of this stuff, it confuses them. We tell them, look, you have 6 risk profiles, from very aggressive to very conservative. Based on what you've told us, you're this age, you earn so much, we think you can take moderate risk. So 40% of your money will go in stocks, 20% in real estate, 30% in commodities, so on and so forth. And they are happy with that. They press next, they send us money, we invest it, they can see it, and they can see it move up and down, and they're very happy because our investment committee consists of the world's leading quants and portfolio managers. We have the ex-head of BlackRock iShares, Dr. Alan Lane, who's on our investment committee. We have Sameem full-time from Google. So these guys know what they're doing. It's all math at the end of the day. If your relationship manager comes in and sells you something, he's not actually doing anything, right? They're salespeople. They're not financial portfolio quant geniuses. They can't outperform the market. So they just sell you their own funds and have the most kickback for them. And that's the whole industry today. So, and it's worse going east. So honestly, in this region, it's a mess, right? So America's quite efficient. Europe is still inefficient. This place, forget about it. I'm sorry to say, but it's very, very inefficient, the financial institutions here. And then Asia gets a little more efficient again. So I think explaining the education part is the hardest thing for us, not the actual portfolio management, because it's all math. It's modern portfolio theory.
And then, and so do you think that, when it comes to the different things that you offer, will education also become part of your platform, or?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's a huge part of what we're doing now. So we've already started pushing out a video series, 2 parts. One is on what is Islamic investing, because nobody knows what that even means. Everyone knows not to drink alcohol, not to eat pork. Nobody knows anything about Islamic finance. That's just how it is. Second is what is investing, what is finance, what is a stock, what is a sukuk. So those are a separate series of videos. These are the 2 things we're hoping will educate. And it's already on YouTube. If you type in, go to our channel, we push out a video every week just to educate people, and then it's the biggest gap. Education is the biggest gap. People get taken advantage of because financial institutions have no competitors. It's really sad. Yeah,
no, that's very true.
Coming from a bank, sorry.
No, I mean, like, at the end of the day, we're a special bank, right? So we're a development bank.
I'm completely joking. No.
But it's true. When you talk about,
Great work.
Any more questions?
Thank you, Mr. Junaid Narij. Can you tell us more about...
Sorry, can you just introduce yourself?
I'm Mohamed Foulad, Economical Behavior Specialist.
Hi,
can you share with us, please, regarding your track record for the last 5 years? And is it CFTC or SEC regulated or not?
Track record for the portfolios?
Yes.
Okay, so because it's modern portfolio theory, we follow the index. So you can trace the track record back as much as you can. The optimal portfolio is built on the track record because nobody can tell the future. We can only see the past. So we see how the indices are performing, and mathematically we draw an efficient frontier, and we pick the most efficient portfolio for every single risk profile.
Delta of how much?
Sorry?
That's right. So you're beating the index by how much? By percentage-wise?
We are the index.
Sorry?
We are the index.
You are the index.
We're passive investors, right? We say that the index outperforms active managers. So we give you exposure to the index.
Okay, the index, but the portfolio, comparing to, for example, for your equities, like only in the technology. So comparing to the NASDAQ.
So the equity is the S&P 500 index. It is the exchange. It is the index.
It is the index itself. So
yeah, we invest in indices. It's passive exposure. So we don't stock pick. We don't try to outperform because math proves that you cannot outperform. If you're outperforming, you're doing some insider trading, most probably. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's what math says. I'm not. Yeah.
So are you regulated by SEC or CFTC?
We're SEC regulated, right? SEC, I guess. I don't know what CFTC is.
CFTC, the Commodity Trading Futures Association.
Where is that?
State, CFTC.
Never heard of it. No.
I'm regulated because
no, that's great. No,
that's
I guess
maybe
not.
it's more than commodities.
Yeah, we don't do futures or no. Part of our exposure is in commodities through stock exchanges. So I guess we don't have to trade on a commodities exchange.
So I mean ETFs, which tracks commodities.
Correct. Yeah, indices or ETFs. So index products or ETFs. Yeah, absolutely.
For the actual commodities. So
correct. Yeah, we don't. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
What's your business actually? Since
I'm into financial markets. I'm talking about my own business. It's economical behavior. We are doing some coaching, and we trading, online trading for the FX, foreign exchange, derivatives, options, all these derivatives. We have mainly focused on derivatives. Okay. So I'm thinking a way to Islamize these things. So we find a way for some commodities we can trade in spot markets.
Yeah.
And we are working now more to have an FX because make it in an Islamic way only. Dealing or taking care of the swaps not enough.
Yeah, we don't do derivatives or
because I've done my things
vanilla
in Islamic finance. So if we went to Islamic things, so we have a lot of things which get till the morning. There is no speculation. Speculation doesn't work. Haram.
No, you know, for us, we try to keep it transparent because what we've seen is people have lost trust in the Islamic finance industry because they don't understand it, and for good reason, right?
There's a difference between Islamic banking, investment, and actual finance.
Absolutely. Islamic finance is very, very broad, but retail clients group us together. So if you look at people reaching out to us, and we have, you know, alhamdulillah, thousands of clients, and we advertise a lot, all everyone says is, we don't trust you Islamic banks. And you're like, wait a minute. You know, firstly, we're not a bank. Secondly, you know, we have nothing to do with Islamic banks. And then thirdly, why? But we don't have time to get into that. And the reason is they don't understand, right? So it's a whole, again, an education piece. And we don't try to complicate it. So what we do is very simple. You give us the money, we invest it in things you can see, assets. We don't touch options, derivatives. We don't lend. There's no margin trading, nothing. At the end of the year, we give a purification report.
No short selling.
Nothing. No, absolutely not. In fact, even custodians, you don't realize they lend your securities, right? It's a mess out there. Nobody even knows. So you buy a stock, you don't know that stock is being lent to someone else. That's how brokers make their money. Anyways, for us, we don't do any of that. And at the end of the year, we tell you, these are all your stocks we've bought for you because you can see it live anyways. And for every stock, here's how much was from interest, here's how much was from tobacco, here's how much was for firearms. No one will tell you that. They'll say, oh, it's a halal or it's not halal based on some arbitrary numbers they come up with. For us, we'll say, look, here's the report. You do what you want with it, but we have to tell you so that our conscience is clear. Because at the end of the day, we have to answer to God. It's a big responsibility having something that is, you know, stamped. So I think we pride ourselves on transparency more than anything. They have to know. You have to know everywhere your money is.
No, it's good. It's very, very challenging to understand because who's investing in this company and those companies investing in other companies. There are also a lot of details.
It's a mess out there.
Good. Thank you very much.
Great, thanks for your question. We have one here, and then we'll bring over to this side of the room.
Thank you, Raj and Junaid. Regarding Wahid, yes, sure, thank you. I hope you can hear me now.
Yeah, but
yes. Thank you, Raj and Junaid. I just wanted to ask your personal opinion on vertical and horizontal expansion. For example, you just mentioned Islamic banks. You know, would you take Wahid to be a bank in the future once you have the opportunity, or is it not worth your time?
Good question. For us, we're off a very that's a tricky answer. Let me.
I have one more question, if you didn't mind, regarding Wahid.
Okay, sure. Yeah.
You said you base your investments, or you are the index, as you said.
Yeah.
Do you take into account the economic downturn into it? Or do you have any protective measures for the investors when the market crashes? What do you do?
Good question. I'll address your second question first. So when we backtest portfolios, we make sure we backtest it past recessions, right? So it takes it into account. The math is taken into account. So that first step where we pick the asset classes, like stocks, commodities, you know, sukuk. When we run that matrix and the correlation covariance, what we do is we see how it performs in a downturn, like you said. So in a recession, what happens? Stocks fall, gold goes up, everyone goes safe. So it gets balanced roughly. So yes, it's significantly safer than keeping all your money in real estate, as a lot of people here would have learned in the recession. So absolutely, that's the whole point of this, is to diversify as much as possible, which is also an Islamic thing, right? We have to shy away from risk and we have to be as diversified as possible. So yes. The first question of yours are we going to be a bank? Short answer, no. Nobody needs to get stressed. We don't ever want to do loans or margins, or it's just a little hard to justify Islamically. And yeah, so what we want to do is we want to be a custodial institution. So we do get a lot of people who email us saying, look, I just want to keep my money with you, don't invest it. I just want to keep it with you because I don't have an Islamic bank, which is weird, but okay. So what we've started to do is we are building a product where you get an IBAN number, you get a debit card, you can make transfers, you can take insurance, you can do anything and everything. No loans. All your money you keep with us will be invested depending on your risk profile, and you can see it. It might fall, it might go up. We will never give loans, we will never guarantee you a return. And because in our mind, there's no such thing. And so I wouldn't call it a bank because a bank is a lending institution. I'd call it a custodial institution or something like that.
Great, thank you.
Salah Al-Majdoub, and I work for Jihad Advisory. Now, the question to you is regarding the screening process, the Islamic Sharia screening process for the stocks. I'm a little bit confused here. So are you using do you have like your own index which uses the screening process of the IOFI or something similar like that? Or you use a conventional index and then you offer the purification report? A little bit confusing.
Very good question, a little technical, but I'd love to answer it. So firstly, we have our full-time Sharia board by IOFI standards. So they have their own numbers. Every different standard setting body has their own numbers. IOFI has, debt to capital or whatever else. There's 3 of them. Dow Jones has its own, so on and so forth. For the indexes, we've pushed out for equities. So in the US, we have the S&P 500 Wahid Index, Sharia. They have their own Sharia index with their own Sharia scholars, the best of the world. So we didn't have to do anything, but we did. Why did we do something? The S&P Sharia index, which nobody realized, 2 of the top constituents are Lockheed Martin and Boeing. Both are arms manufacturers for all of them. So why is it in the index? Oh, because it's defense. It's like, what? It doesn't make any sense. Anyways, a lot of common sense is missing from the Islamic finance industry. It's very sad to say. So we have had to remove certain constituents because it just does not make sense to say, oh, it's defense, it's not arms. Someone's defense is someone's offense, right? You can't do that. So we don't pick sides. So we follow IOFI, but we do selectively remove stuff we're not happy with.
Just for those who don't know what IOFI is, if you can just...
It's actually a Bahraini-based standard-setting body for Islamic finance, and it is so far the gold standard for Islamic finance. So we are,
Bahrain.
In Bahrain.
Yay, Bahrain.
Yeah, absolutely. No, they solved a huge problem for everyone. Everyone was coming up with their own standards. I say 30%, someone says 33%, it's 32%, one guy fails. There was no logic. So these guys standardized it, which at least makes it simpler. And so we use that.
Okay, 2 quick questions. Now, some of these funds, quant funds, they're very sensitive to what's going on in the market, at what's going to happen in the market. And they sense if the market is going down, and they liquidate, meaning that it's not just stocks, real estate, then there is just liquidity. Are you doing something like that when they anticipate a fall down?
No, absolutely not. So we are of the hypothesis that we cannot tell the future. We don't want to try and tell the future. We want to diversify as much as possible. And that's the reason we diversify asset classes, right? If there is a downturn, you have gold in your portfolio, you have sukuk in your portfolio, it will hedge, and in the long term, you'll get your expected return. So no, we don't go that far, because see, it's a very tricky line. When you start selectively decision making and stock picking, where do you stop? Who is taking those decisions? And that's where a lot of these quant managers will say, oh, we're not telling you, it's a black box. For us, we don't want that. We want transparency. This is the math we're using. This is how we're doing it. This is why we're doing it. Now it's your decision. The day we start doing that stuff, it gets very tricky. And honestly, most of it is sham, right? You have most of these quant funds that nobody knows if it works or not because there hasn't been a recession since they started. The only few quant funds that have worked are 100 billion plus because they've worked. So we're not in that business.
Final question. Which nationalities do you accept money from at this point in time?
Everyone except OFAC countries. Yeah.
Thank you. Over there, and then at the back.
Hello, Junaid. This is Pakiza from the Economic Development Board. And speaking of countries, I'm interested to know if you break down your clients into regions, what's the share of market that the Arab region takes? And if you have any data about Bahrain, has it been picking up the GCC market? Just a quick market analysis, if you may.
Yeah, sure. So we've actually got a lot of data on this, right?
Tell she's from the Economic Development Board. That's a question.
Yeah, so we get all the McKinsey data. We get all sorts of stuff. Short answer, there's only one GCC country in the top 5 list. In fact, top 10 list, which is Saudi. There's no one else there. Bahrain is way down just because it's small, not for any other reason. So it's not a big region in the Islamic finance space at all. The biggest regions, believe it or not, are India, Nigeria, Turkey, Egypt. People don't realize because we do what we're comfortable with. But yeah, sorry.
And as you mentioned, the way you're going to be addressing that is through educational sort of, or
no, so each country has its own challenges. If you look at India, it's more of a political challenge, right? If you look at Nigeria, it's more of a regulatory challenge. So it really depends on the region. Everything has its own issues. The way we do it, because we're not a bank, we're not as highly regulated. So what we can do is we can reverse solicit, which is kind of a, I wouldn't call it a cheat code, but it's something regulators don't like, right? You can go online, sign up to Interactive Brokers or whoever, and they can accept you from wherever you are in the world. And there's nothing anyone can do about it because they're not soliciting you here in their country. They're sitting in their office and you are coming to them. So you can go to whoever you want. We're online. We're not soliciting anyone anywhere, so we can take people from all over the world with our licenses wherever we are. Regulators do hate this, and it'll come to a point when we have enough people where they'll write us a notice saying, look, you have to register or we'll block you. But that's in the millions. So I think it's a very complicated answer to your question. Yeah.
Great. So we have, we'll let you go first, and then we'll go to the back side. I'm sorry, I'm going to make you do some steps today, and then bring it back to the front.
Sorry, Junaid, I couldn't help myself. Just a quick question. You have Bahrain Sandbox here for FinTech. You have FinTech Bay. You have Pakiza right next to me. You have Arij on the... You have a couple of hours to the largest Islamic markets in the world. Why aren't you in Bahrain?
Well, I am in Bahrain.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's why I'm here.
He's on the route. He's en route.
Right. Okay, let me rephrase it. What are your plans to be situated here and maybe attract other fintech and other Sharia-compliant industries and startups to Bahrain?
See, in terms of Sharia-compliant startups, there's not too many, right? There's a handful, if any, at all whatsoever. Islamic fintech, forget about it. There's no such thing. But what we have seen is Bahrain is still the most mature regulator and economy in the GCC. To be very transparent and honest. So we are most comfortable here. We've spoken to many other regulators, and Bahrain is the most forward. So we are working with the CBB. We are very happy with everyone here. They're very friendly, very welcoming, very educated
we didn't
and
pay
mature.
Him. He wouldn't accept it. It's not Islamic, so you can believe us.
We'll discuss the price after. But yeah, we absolutely look forward to it because at the end of the day, we want a regional presence. We need the regional trust. We can't just sit in America or in England and reverse solicit everyone forever. We want to come to the region and we want to do it in a big way, inshallah, right? It is a big, like if you look at the GCC, it's a very young population. It's perfect for our service. The numbers aren't there, but for the product we're offering, it is absolutely perfect. People are starting to use the internet, they're banked. It makes complete sense. They're all on social media. You know, it's definitely something we're very aggressively looking to do. It's just we have to iron out the few regulatory kinks that of course exist anywhere, which inshallah we're doing. But if you can see the trend, we're kind of moving east, and Bahrain is for sure the next stop, inshallah.
Inshallah. Over there.
Thank you. My name is Abdul Basit Ali, management consultant. Actually, we come to ROWAD talk every time to take one or two takeaways related to how to manage the innovation process. And today, yes, we are inspired, but I have a problem with this because when it comes to innovation process management, somebody told us to be ready with our technical side. Another expert told us to be ready with our financials, forecasts, and we should know how to pitch also sometimes. But today, you informed us that you were not technically ready, and people just trusted you. And I have a problem with this also because trust is earned. How come a person who sees you for the first time trusts you and push the money to be under your management? So please, again, to summarize my question, I need only one or two takeaways that I learned today and try to apply them.
I mean, just to before he answers your question, I think you missed when he said that, he went into that room and they kept asking him. So he spent 4 hours of being grilled. So maybe he didn't have it on paper, but he had it in here. But I'll let you answer that, Junaid.
Thank you so much.
I can make it worse by telling another story. I don't know if I should do that. But I'll answer your question and I'll be nice to not confuse everyone. So, see, at the end of the day, like Arish very rightly said, these people are professional, educated, and knowledgeable investors. They know what to look out for. Those 4 hours they grilled me, it's a lot of time. They asked me numbers, projections, what the plan is, when we think we'll break even. So everything you've been asked to do, I'm sure they asked me. For sure they asked me. They know what they're doing. But they also know that all of this is a projection, right? It's there, it's great, inshallah, we'll follow the track. 99% is not going to happen, everyone knows that. So it's good to have it there, but I don't think anyone should invest on it. If you have an investor investing on numbers and business plan, you might as well go take a bank loan. Why are you with a VC, right? It makes no sense. So it's a bit of a balance. You should be prepared. You should have everything. In terms of having your product, I don't agree with that. Wrong people. If someone says, come when you have your product ready, then why am I with you? I have my product ready. I don't know.
I mean, I think, you know, maybe if I can add on that, Junaid, I think what sometimes people mistake for having the paperwork and stuff is just being prepared. So, I mean, in my humble experience, I've sometimes sat across people who say, you know, why aren't you guys giving us money? And then, you know, you ask the basic questions, and they don't know. They don't know where they're headed. They don't know, you know, how much they expect to make money. And like you said, you know, we always say that if anyone was able to predict their future, they're liars, because we never know what's going to happen. So you're talking even about, you know, making money. Nobody knows how the market's going to actually perform. But even with these kind of startups, and it's a new technology, it's very, very hard for us to predict how that's going to do. But the investor wants to know that you're able to answer the questions. And when you don't know, you have the humility to say, I'll get back to you, rather than misrepresent and give information that could actually set you up to fail. So, and this is something, you know, maybe Junaid won't be able to say about, but when I was hearing a lot about WAHID and, you know, and why we really wanted to have Junaid up here on stage, was they kept saying that, you know, Junaid always has the ability to sit in front of us and let us know what's happening, and always is honest about what's going on in his business. So if they're not, you know, if they're struggling, he says, and if they're doing well, he says, and you know, you can tell he's passionate about this whole optimization thing, which, you know, it's gonna make me have nightmares at night that I don't even know what he's talking about. But, you know, but ultimately, I think if you want to take a takeaway, is it always be prepared. You know, it's very important to be prepared. When you attend a networking event, when you're going out to meetings, if you don't even know, if you're going to sit and somebody, you never know when somebody's going to ask you that question, right? And so if you don't even know the answer, then there's going to be that ultimate say, okay, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. And so, you know, you've written that person off, even though you might, you know what you're doing. So I think maybe always be prepared. And I think some people it comes naturally, like Junaid, but others have to actually do their homework.
No, you're absolutely right. I missed out an important point. The reason they stopped after 4 hours is because I remember Laurent, the McKinsey guy, he asked me a question, I didn't have the answer to it. I said, sorry, I don't know. And that was, you know, why we stopped after 4 hours, probably. But yeah, you're absolutely right. You have to say, I don't know, because you don't know, and you have to be in it together. You have to learn. See, no one knows everything. There's no way you can know everything. You have to be able to learn and take a decision. No matter what you study, no one can study everything. It just doesn't work like that. At least from what I've seen, there's no way, right? So the ability to you know, be humble, like you rightly said, to say you don't know, to learn, and then to take a decision is very, very important. So yeah, you know, perhaps I misrepresented a lot of things.
I don't think so. I think that sometimes it's, you know, it's hard to, you know, maybe to describe what your experience is, but like me sitting from this position, I see that, you know, you know, he's an entrepreneur who actually knew what he wants to do. And sometimes it's okay. I think sometimes people go in front of investors when it's a bit too early, you know, and they accept that meeting, and that could potentially, you know, build that, you know, misconception that they don't know what they're talking about. So sometimes it's okay to say, okay, I'm not ready to take this meeting, but I'll come back to you when I actually am able to answer all the questions, or hopefully all the questions. I'm leaving you waiting, so please.
Thank you very much for the time. A couple of very easy questions and a couple of normal questions. How long have you
before we let you answer, what's the difference between an easy and normal question?
It will be an answer in 2 or 3 words.
Okay.
So how long have you started this company?
It's been 3 years now.
Okay, and what was the annual return on investment in each year?
So in terms of like in terms of the portfolios of clients or for investors?
The total of the company, for your investor.
Oh, for our investors?
Yes.
See, initially the guys that invested, I said you name the price, right? I didn't care. I didn't have a valuation in mind. I was like, wow, you know, this is a big number, you know, for my work. And
No, I'm sorry. I'm talking about return on investment, not an investment. Yes.
For the portfolios?
Yes. Okay. Yes.
So last year, for example, was between 3.5% to 14.5%, with significantly less standard deviation than any
And the previous
single
year?
index. We were live, like we took our first few clients a little over a year ago. So
Okay.
we started the company 3 years ago, but we went live a little over a year ago. So I can't, I mean, it's backtested as indices, like I said, but if you want actual returns, that was it.
Okay. And you talked and you mentioned that you worked for 6 months on something, and then you had almost 20 years working on some other things. I think this goes to the same point that what did you do? You worked for 1 year on some things, but you didn't mention the details about it.
That's because it's very intricate, right? I set out trying to build a custodial infrastructure that can trade any asset classes and fractionalize them in the back end. So to explain that might be a little hard to do. But anyways, we tried to build it up.
And we might not even have the time.
Yeah, and it didn't work. So all our work was wasted. Then we built it again. So we had to like do it twice or thrice over. It was a mess.
I asked this question because you said you had nothing, but you said that you worked for 1 year. And you had something that you worked for 6 months.
So the guys came in before that 1 year. Okay, so the timeline seems to be a bit that. So I started, I didn't have anything. I applied for the SEC license. The angel investors came on board before I had anything. And then with their help and support, I built something over a year.
Got it. Thank you very much.
Great. I know you guys are all probably dying to ask questions, and then I know a lot of you are maybe camera shy. And because this is being live streamed, FYI, I forgot to tell you this, but it's okay. You only have, some people in Dubai and all over the world looking at it. But so what I want to do is I want to let Junaid end with just a few words, and I'll maybe summarize what I've learned today sitting next to you. And then we'll leave everyone able to network, because I think some people are hungry. And then I feel Denise might kill me right over there, you see.
Oh,
So when she stands there, that means Erij, get off.
No, I'm relaxed, by the way. So if any of you have questions afterwards as well, I'm.
But any
okay,
final words to the audience?
In terms of final words for people who are going on a journey, I can tell you that firstly it was misrepresented that we're a successful company, because in this industry you're not a successful company until you're either really profitable or you've been sold. You're going to have stress for the rest of your next 5 to 10 years, so you need to really understand that you're not going to be able to sleep, you're going to have stress issues, and it's a never-ending thing. There'll be more and more and more and more stress. There's no such thing as we're successful because we raised money and we have a big team. It doesn't matter. There have been companies at hundreds of millions of dollars who have come tumbling down. So you need to be very realistic and understand that this is a very stressful road to take, and you need to be very committed, and it's not for the light-hearted. So thick-skinned, and a lot of stress is going to come your way. So good luck. But don't let that stop you, because if it's your passion, then you have to do it.
All right, thanks, Junaid. And I think before we applaud you for taking your time. First of all, I have to thank Lemis, because I think putting you on that early flight actually brought out a lot from our discussion, unless you're always like this.
I skipped the flight.
Oh, you did? Okay, so Lemis, I can't thank you actually for that. But I think what I can say is that, what I gained tonight, and I hope everybody here in the audience did, was the importance of actually knowing what you're doing. So imagine, going into a meeting or sitting across from people and pretending that you know. There's always going to be somebody that's going to be able to catch you on that. I think being honest and the importance of representing yourself clearly. And I know it's the ethos of our religion, in Islam, being honest and transparent, but I think taking that, for those of us who are, I think it's the ethos of most religions, of putting that into the business, building trust between your team, your investors, and really believing yourself to the point where you feel arrogant inside, so not on the outside, but being arrogant inside to say, you know what, I don't care if you don't know what I'm talking about. especially if you, please say the word, I can't say it, stochastic mathematics. Because some people might say, what is that, and what is optimization, and these are just buzzwords, but actually really believing in what you want to do, and then actually moving forward. And I think, I don't know about you guys, but I'm definitely putting my $100 to test, Wahed after tonight. And I don't know if anyone else in the audience will do that. But thank you so much, Junaid, for coming here. I mean, I know that you don't usually take the time out because you're busy optimizing everything. So I hope this was an optimal use of your time here in Bahrain, and I hope to see you here with your office somewhere around here where we can actually grab a coffee and continue this discussion. So thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Sorry, before I let Junaid come down, can I just ask my team to come up to take a picture, and if we can also give them a round of applause, because this is a Thursday night and they're here as well.